Welcome to the show, everybody. Hope you're having a good Friday night. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio. This is your host, Michael Yaffee, of course, and I'm joined with producer Mr. Michael Formisano. Ready for the tropical storm, Michael?
I'm ready for some hurricane parties.
Yeah. Woo!
Oh, yeah.
I just can't believe how every time there's like rain or just a storm in this state, people go crazy. I don't understand it.
They do.
We're gonna have the term "hunker down." We're gonna hear that every 2 seconds again.
I had this great conversation this morning with someone who's obviously not from Florida, talking about how they bought all these sandbags and thousands of gallons of water, and I'm just thinking, if it's,
for what?
I don't blink my eyes if it's less than a Category 3.
I know. I don't either. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to one of my friends before the show, and she's like, "I got my bags packed just in case." And I'm like, just in case of what? She lives on like the third floor of a big apartment. And she's like, well, I'm just afraid. I mean, I'm more afraid if the roof blows off or something.
In an apartment building?
Yeah, for one. Yeah, it's in an apartment building. And I'm like, I'm laughing at her. She's like, don't laugh at me. I'm like, you're silly because it's a tropical storm.
Yeah, I must not have been down here very long.
I guess, I don't know.
I'll tell you what, though, what I just heard today is it's been a lot about the Katrina anniversary.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been so long.
Yeah,
It's been 10 years since we've had a real active season that's actually affected us.
Yeah, 10 years.
So.
Were you in town in 2004 when we had the 4?
I was in South Florida. I rode out Wilma. I rode out all of those guys.
Yeah, but
the tourist ones.
But you probably, because Charlie hit directly Orlando, so that was
we just
crazy.
got like the feeder bands of that one, but like Wilma was bad. Katrina was all right.
Charlie was crazy here. I was out of power for like 2 weeks.
Ivan, that's the other one. That was.
Ivan. That
Ivan
one hit the panhandle.
Yeah, but I think it went through us first. Anyway, regardless,
Anyways, it's just tropical
it's
storm
just
mania every
rain.
time, and a lot of it's because it's the news companies, the news channels. They love it when this stuff happens because it's easy news.
And the stores, Walmart.
Oh yeah,
Coral Springs had. There's pictures online of shelves in Walmart at Coral Springs, Florida, completely empty, and this was taken like 2 days ago.
Yeah, it's a tropical storm. Even if it's a hurricane, it'll maybe be a Category 1.
Yes.
When it hits land, and they're not even thinking it's going to be that.
Yeah.
And it looks like at first they thought it was going more and more east. Looks like it might hit more west of the state now.
Shifting.
It might even go more west where it doesn't really even hit our state. And maybe it'll hit the panhandle. So we have no idea.
We'll see if it's even still intact once it gets through Puerto Rico's
they're
mountains.
thinking it might not be. So.
All
right, I'll move on from that. We're just making sure everybody's hunkered down. Gotta love the hunker down words. All right, so this week, I love my job. I love working in radio. This week was one of those weeks where I didn't love my job so much. And before I get to that, I almost forgot. I just want to say this hour is brought to you by Doc's Streetside Grill. If you want to, forget about the news this weekend, just have a good time, go to Doc's Streetside Grill. Great food, great fun. 1315 West Orange Avenue. Go to docstreetsidegrill.com for more information. But this week, it's just one of those weeks. A couple days were days I really didn't like coming to work. Because that tragedy in Virginia of those 2 reporters who were killed on live TV by this gunman, I mean, it affects me. I don't enjoy having to talk about that. I don't enjoy seeing it.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. You said it, you came in, you said it ruined your day. It almost ruined my day. And we've both done journalism stuff in our lives. I work in media, and I know people who are news reporters very well. And it's just heartbreaking to see it. It's just one of those days when we have these tragedies like this where I don't enjoy. We have to talk about it. It's important to talk about it. But it's not something I get up and enjoy going to work for those days. It's not. And believe it or not, a lot of people's first thoughts on this stuff is the angles of it, the political angles, gun control, family angles, all this stuff. my first thought, especially when I saw the video, is I just wish I could have saved her. You see it and you just want to be able to save her. You just want to be able to help them. And you just think of the families and the boyfriend and the girlfriend of the cameraman, how they were affected. Oh, that was my first thought.
They were about to move in together, the reporter and one of the anchors, I believe.
Yes. And then the cameraman who died, his fiance was watching in the
they had just gotten engaged, right? Or recently.
I think so. But she was her last day there. It was her last day at the station.
They gave her. That's right. I read they gave her.
And they gave her a little thing,
party,
and they were gonna celebrate afterwards. And she was in the control room. She's a producer, and she saw it happen. And immediately, people come up and they have all these angles about it, and I couldn't even think about that stuff. It's just awful. But then more details came out about this killer and what motivated him to do this. And it was what really stuck out to me was two things that I saw from this killer that I see a lot in our culture, actually. Now, this guy is an extreme example of these things, and he's obviously not right in the head. But two things. One, his quest, and I say this literally, quest to be a victim. What do I mean by that? Well, this guy was black, this killer, Flanagan. He went by the name Bryce Williams. He was black and he was gay. And everywhere he went, he literally looked for opportunities to be offended. He literally looked for opportunities to say he was a victim. It became his purpose in life to be offended and to be a victim of somebody else, of discrimination or racism or hate. And the amazing thing about it is he was never that. He was never a victim of these things, really. He was never a victim of discrimination or hate or racism like he thought. He was able to get many jobs in news. And he would have to make up these situations so he could say, I'm a victim. Look at this. You're all racist, and I'm a victim of this racist, sexist, homophobic society. He couldn't wait to come out and do that. He filed complaints against people. I read in the New York Post today. He filed a complaint against Allison Parker, who he killed. Earlier, when she was an intern, he filed a complaint against her. You know what she said? This was the racist thing that she said. One time she said out in the field, meaning it's a common news thing that, the cameraman or the news reporter's out in the field today. It's a common saying. And he said, that's racist. I've never heard that of being racist, but I guess he thought it could be mean, blacks used to be out in the field when they were slaves or something. The other thing she said was, I think it was a swinging by. I'm swinging by this place. Oh, that's racist. And he would make these situations up where he would get mad, and he was really hard to work with. And he was eventually fired because he would just be incredibly hard to work with, and he would be really mad at people over nothing. And the amazing thing is it was all created in his mind. He wasn't really a victim, but in his mind he created it. It was his purpose to be a victim. And I see this a lot in our society today. It seems like every time you turn around, someone is offended by something. And not only are they offended, but they have to tell everybody else in the world why they're offended. They have to tell everybody else in the world why they're a victim. And they want praise for it, and they get it. As long as their offense, as long as their victimization fits some political agenda, which doesn't have to be, and the victimization doesn't even have to be real, but as long as it fits a political agenda, they're praised for it. Not for accomplishing anything, but because they're a victim and they're offended. And now they're heroes because they or saying they're offended. This goes way beyond this killer's motivation. The Black Lives Matter movement is one area. They're a group basically that goes out and looks and waits for situations where they're victims of discrimination or racism, where they're offended. Their whole purpose is to be offended. Now, some people might disagree with that, but it seems like that's where it's grown to. They say, oh, well, they're against police brutality. Yeah, some of that. But look at what's happening. They go to situations before knowing the facts. Look at the Michael Brown situation. Before really knowing the facts, before knowing what's happened, they assumed he was a victim of racism. But when the facts came out, and this is according to the Justice Department, by the way, and the autopsy reports, by the way, he wasn't a victim. He was the criminal. He was the perpetrator. But the Black Lives Matter, because they're told over and over again in this society, if you're black, you're a victim. Mostly by the Democrat Party, by the way, because it fits a political agenda. The next thing, and this is on the Republican side, actually. Donald Trump. Why is he so popular? You know, every time he goes up in the polls, it's after he says he's a victim of the media. Donald Trump went after Megyn Kelly this week and called her a bimbo or whatever. He had a bad debate performance in that first debate. But what was the story after that first debate? It wasn't that he had a bad debate performance. No, it was he was a victim of the moderators. It was the moderator's fault that he had a bad debate. So now he goes forward with this narrative that he's a victim of the media. He's a victim of the media complex and of politicians. And that fits the political narrative of many Republicans. So that goes forward. Another thing, when it comes to this killer, why was he able to get jobs over and over again, even though he kept having issues with employers at all these jobs? Well, because HRs, they don't check. In fact, sometimes it's illegal to ask more of previous employers. When they call previous employers for references and stuff, a lot of times they just ask, did this person work there? Yes. That's all they can ask. And you ask them why that's all they ask. They're afraid of lawsuits. They're afraid of lawsuits because if they ask, oh, was he fired? Oh, was he a good employee or a bad employee? They're afraid that someone's going to sue them of discrimination because of not hiring them. It's that political correctness again. Oh, we can't offend the guy. He might sue us. There's lawsuits. So we can't actually check the references and see if this was a good employee. We just say, oh, you hired? Okay, that's it. So they should have known ahead of time that this person was a bad employee, had trouble passing. He should have never been hired. But they didn't check into those things because they're afraid. Nope, we can't touch that. We might offend him. He'll sue us. And then we go to another thing. The Caitlyn Jenner thing's another thing. This is a person who didn't accomplish anything, but she's a victim of discrimination in society because she's transgendered. Even before anything has ever happened, she's considered, considered a hero. Why? Well, because transgenders are victims, and this person's standing against victimhood. It's just amazing to me how we almost want it. Everywhere we look, we want to be offended. And that's what this guy influenced this guy a lot. He couldn't wait to be offended by something. That's the first thing that motivated this guy. The second thing, and I've talked about this before too on this show, the desire for fame and attention. This guy not only did what he did as revenge, but he had to post it on Twitter and Facebook to get the attention, and he had to write a giant manifesto. So it would go everywhere. Because one, I'm a victim of society, and two, he wanted to get attention for it from the world because he was a victim. This desire for fame without actually accomplishing anything real is huge in our society. All we want, so many people want attention, and the ways we're willing to get attention is scary. This is a very extreme example, but you have many other stories where people will try to do something crazy and post it on YouTube just to get attention. I remember a few years ago, there were some young teenage girls who posted on YouTube them beating up their friend. They just wanted attention. They wanted to be famous. So instead of actually working hard to accomplish something real in their lives, all they wanted to do was get attention. So they beat up one of their friends. All for fame and glory. So we're all victims. And by the way, like I said, this is perpetrated a lot for political reasons. I talk about how everything's about politics. You have a party in the Democrat Party who constantly tells different groups they're victims of society, they're victims of whites, they're victims of the rich, they're victims of police all the time, and it gets in their minds. Well, their whole life is surrounded by this idea, and many of them are raised this way. So yet people who are black or who are gay or whatever, and women, that's another one. Women are victims. We talked about how women say they're victims of a rape culture now. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. You have a society where these people are convinced, mostly by political leaders, that if you're black, if you're gay, if you're a woman, if you're this, if you're that, you're going to be a victim. And it's just a fact. This country's going to have something against you. And people get convinced of that. And you create a culture where bad stuff can happen. It's very dangerous. So the god of fame and the god of victimization is taken over. And the thing is, to get your purpose from these things, it's never enough. Like fame and glory and attention, it's never enough because it's not what we really want. What we really want is love and purpose in our life. And we can't find love and purpose through those things. 407-674-1025. If you have any comments, we're going to get into the gun control thing in the next segment. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime.
Yes, this is the voice of reason who sifts through everything in the news that is beyond reason. We're here every Friday night, but if you miss any of the show, there are plenty of places to get the podcast. You can go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com, and list all the different places you can get it. Get on iTunes, Spreaker. We now have a iHeartRadio channel, so all the podcasts, go to download your iHeartRadio app, just search Beyond Reason Radio, and you'll find all the podcasts there. Another place you can get it is the TuneIn Radio app. Go to the TuneIn Radio app, and you just search Beyond Reason Radio and follow me. I already have 12 followers on Beyond Reason Radio, but I need a lot more. So go to that, or just, like I said, you can like us on Facebook, follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. Plenty of places to get the show. So last segment, I was talking about motivations of the shooter, and I was talking about how our society, people love to be offended, and they love to be victims. 407-674-1025 if you have any take on this. I have a call on this. Tim in Ocoee, you're on Beyond Reason Radio. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, Michael. Hey, Michael. It's Tim. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very thankful by the fact that they gave you the platform in which to talk to it. I wish you great success. I think you're a thoughtful person.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I do.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think you're a thoughtful person. I think you have great potential, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, sir. I might record this phone call and send it to my boss if that's okay. Go ahead, sir.
That becomes lucrative for you. I appreciate what you're saying about victimization. I don't think it's a matter of society. I think it's rather a matter of a political device. And I think it's a political device used by both sides. Certainly I can't argue with some of the things that you're saying tonight, but you have to equally agree. There are people who say there's a war on Christmas. There are people who say they're being persecuted as Christians.
Well,
and a great deal of that dialogue coming from those corners is certainly using that type of rhetoric as a point of leverage. They're using that kind of harsh rhetoric as a point of leverage.
Well, and you know, I talked about too how Donald Trump, one of the big things on the right to say they're a victim of is the media.
War on Christmas is painting themselves as a victim equally.
Yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying, and it's definitely, everything's about politics. We don't want to believe it, but everything's about politics, and you're right. A lot of this is done to divide us. And I talked about in the last segment, like I said, Donald Trump, who said he was a victim of the media. And that's another thing the right says a lot of times. They're victims of the media. And I a lot of times try not to say that because the media is so diverse now. What is the media anymore?
Exactly.
But, you know, we have our own platforms now. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the other thing is not so much from the victim standpoint as it is that there are people of both political stripes, mind you, okay, who are going to fashion themselves, and they're going to try to portray themselves as being the protector, okay?
Oh, yeah,
Regardless
definitely.
of how you feel about the abortion question, for example, one side saying, we're protecting choice, the other side saying, we're protecting life. And when they stylize themselves as protectors, what they're doing is protecting people from being victims.
Well, I think it goes, I was going to say, I think it's actually worse than that. Not only do they say that they're protector, but they say they're going to get revenge on the other side, for instance.
Yeah, that's the ugly part.
That's the ugly part. And I talk about that a lot in the Democrat Party when they say, you know, they're going to get the rich. They go to the poor communities and they say, we're going to tax the rich more and we're going to get them for being rich. And it doesn't ever help the poor, you know. But it's like you said, it's that political divisiveness. And you're right. And Tim, I thank you for your call. You're right. It's all about politics. We don't want to, we hate to admit that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd rather have a free political society than a tyrannical one. But he makes some excellent points. It is on both sides. I'm not going to lie. I'm not any big proponent of the Republican establishment. Now, I obviously conservative. I obviously vote for Republicans over Democrats. I obviously think there's a huge difference between the two parties, and I think the Democrat Party is much more dangerous than the Republican Party. But I am no one who thinks the Republican Party is perfect. So, and speaking of this, once again, he's talking about political issues. Once again, this is being used for a political purpose. And that is, of course, gun control. Happened right away. Gun control. And there's no thoughtful discussion on this. It's just they see something bad and the reaction is, oh, we have to get rid of the guns. We have to have gun control legislation. Of course, they can't name what legislation would have stopped this shooting. Unless you confiscate every gun in the country, I don't know how you stop a shooting like this. And that's just not going to happen. You want to start a civil war in this country? Try to confiscate all the guns. You want to see a lot of bloodshed. That will start it. So I want to get into some perspective when it comes to gun violence in this country and look at some stats compared to some other things. And we're going to talk about what some of the leaders are saying on this. We're going to get to that in just a moment. And if you have a call, 407-674-1025. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, beyondreasonradio.com.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Or stream the show live by searching News Radio 1025 WFLA. If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. Now, back to Beyond Reason Radio.
Welcome back to the show. This is Michael Yaffee, your voice of reason, your voice of truth through everything in the world that is beyond reason. On the show, we talk faith, culture, and politics. And if you want to join the conversation, you can call 407-674-1025. Now, we talked about in the last segment that the newest thing out of this shooting, of course, the talk about gun control. Gun control came up almost immediately on Twitter within hours after this happened.
Not even.
Yeah, not even. Right away, which is unbelievable. And by the way, just want to say, if you support the Second Amendment, you support the Constitution, join me September 17th outside Orlando City Hall. We're going to rally for Constitution Day. It is the actual day. It's an actual holiday, Constitution Day, on that day. It's not celebrated, really. Most people don't know about it. We know Labor Day. We know all these other holidays, but we don't know Constitution Day. And we wouldn't have any of those other holidays.
How can you forget about the Constitution?
Exactly. It's the main. We wouldn't have anything else.
Any other holidays the way we know them today.
Right. So we're going to be there. Hopefully we're going to have some mini constitutions that we're going to hand out.
Ooh.
So, yeah. So we'll be able to hand those out to people, and you can hand them out to your friends and just get more people. I want to make this a yearly thing. So I just want to get more people involved in this holiday. Yeah. Make it a really big deal in Orlando.
We'll be out there.
Yeah. Yep. Mike will be there, of course. I'll be there speaking. I have some great comments, great things to say on the Constitution. So we're going to do that. And speaking of the Second Amendment, we have gun control. Now, I said before we went to the break, there is no gun control legislation that would have stopped the shooting. This guy bought it legally. He had no criminal background. He had no mental illness background. He had a handgun, which is a handgun. It wasn't like an AR-15 or anything like that. So assault weapons ban wouldn't have done anything. So how would we have stopped this? Well, they say, well, in some countries, they ban all guns, period. You're not going to ban all guns, period. For one, if you did, you would have to go in every home and confiscate them, literally, because there's 300 million guns. This country is awash in guns right now. So you would have to go in people's homes, literally confiscate them. Two, you'd have to secure the border, because just like drugs, gun running across the border would be huge after that. And of course, the same people who want gun control don't want to secure the border. So that's interesting. They don't want to secure the border, but they want gun control. It's kind of backwards. How are you going to get both? You can't get both. It's just a fact. So it's very interesting. And we had some audio here. We have Hillary Clinton. This was literally like hours after this happened. She talked about the need for gun control.
But I will also reiterate, we have got to do something about gun violence in America. And I will take it on. There are many people who face it and know it, but then turn away because it's hard. It's a very political, difficult issue in America. But I believe we are smart enough, we are compassionate enough to figure out how to balance the legitimate Second Amendment rights with preventive measures and control measures so that whatever motivated this murderer who eventually took his own life, we will not see more deaths, needless, senseless deaths.
All right, and it was very hurtful, and I could agree. I don't want to see, nobody wants to see these deaths. But like I said, no gun control would have stopped this guy. It just wouldn't have happened. If guns were banned completely, he could have just got it illegally, especially with how many guns are in this country. By the way, when you talk about gun violence in this country, the majority of gun violence probably happens, and I'm talking murders. If you take out the gang violence and there's a lot of this inner city violence, that gun violence would go down. And that inner city violence, that gang violence, a lot of that was created by the welfare policies brought to you by the left and the Democrat Party that created that culture in the inner cities. Do you think they're going to try to reform any of that? Do you think Hillary Clinton's going to try to reform any of that? No. And you have massive gun control in a lot of those cities where you have the worst gun violence. So there's that. Also have some audio here of the father of the reporter that was killed talking about this similar thing.
I'm going to do something, whatever it takes to get gun legislation to shame people, to shame legislators into doing something about closing loopholes in background checks and making sure crazy people don't get guns.
And I don't blame him for wanting to do something. I understand that. Oh, we have to do something. I agree. And we want to try to understand something like this, but unfortunately bad things happen. It's just this was extra worse because it happened on live TV. But once again, I don't know of any gun control that could have stopped him unless you completely repeal the Second Amendment. And that's not going to happen. And if you did that, you would practically start a civil war in this country. And if you did that, you would have to go in people's homes and confiscate guns. It's not going to happen. By the way, you want to talk about costs, and they say deporting 11 million illegal immigrants would cost a lot of money. If we had to confiscate every gun in this country, can you imagine how much money and power that would take? But I wanted to get a little perspective on this, because when you actually look at the numbers of gun violence, yes, we have more gun violence in this country than we do in a lot of countries in Europe. We do. It's a fact. We have more deaths. But it's not, when you look at the numbers per population, you look at the numbers based on how many guns we have in this country, it's not as big as you would think. Now, in this country, we have about, hold on, let me see. It's around 31,000, a little over 31,000 deaths by gun violence in this country. That's a lot. But when you look at the numbers again, the majority of those deaths are actually by suicide. About 21,000 of that is suicide deaths. Now, that's sad. We don't want to see people kill themselves. But they're going to kill themselves some way. If they're not using a gun, they're going to use something else. So in terms of murders in this country, there's a little over 11,000. In 2013, there was a little over 11,000 murders by gun violence in this country. That's not a small number. We don't want I don't want anyone to be murdered. But I was looking into some other stuff, and these numbers shocked me. Because we're going to talk about banning guns because of people being killed by guns. We need to talk about other things. Let's look at this. How many people die every year, average, from traffic accidents, from their cars? 33,804. This is 2013. This is according to the CDC. In the U.S., over 33,000, almost 34,000 people died in their cars from traffic accidents. I guess we have to ban cars. We have to ban driving. Guess we have to. We're a free country. We should be free to drive a car, but I guess we have to ban cars because that's a lot more than the people died of murder by a gun. This was something I found interesting. Unintentional fall. People that fall unintentionally. 30,000. A little over 30,000 people died from just unintentionally falling in 2013. 30,000. Now, obviously, you can't ban falling, but that gives you some perspective about what needless death happens in this country. There's a lot worse situations in gun violence. Now, this one was very interesting. Unintentional poisoning deaths. 38,851 people die of unintentional poisoning, meaning and the vast majority of those come from taking too many painkillers or Oxycontin or other kind of drugs, and they take too many and they're killed by it. Overdoses and such. 38,000. So do we ban all painkillers? Do we ban all prescription drugs? This just gives you some perspective on things. About 2,500 people die every year from choking. Do we ban all solid food? 2,700 people die from fires. I already talked about falls, poisonings. And then we have 2,000 people die every year from drowning. And by the way, in terms of accidental shootings, 600 people die from accidental shootings. Not a very high number when you consider how many guns are in this country. 300 million guns in this country, 600 maybe die from accidental shootings. So 2,000 annual deaths from pools. I guess we have to, or from drownings, I guess we have to ban pools and all large bodies of water. We have to fence off all large bodies of water. We have to fence off the beach because you could die. But this was the one that was most astounding to me. If you really wanted to prevent deaths in this country, this is what you would ban. According to the CDC, 480,000 people die in this country every year from smoking. 42,000 die from secondhand smoke. Something related to secondhand smoke. More people die from something related, almost 4 times as many people die from secondhand smoke than they do from gun violence. And 48,000 people die from smoking every year. That's a number. That's astounding. So where are the calls to ban smoking? Now, they want to tax it a lot. They will never ban it because they want that tax money. But that just gives you some perspective. I would love for nobody to die of any of these things. But you're looking at real causes of death in this country. Gun violence is not a huge cause of death in this country. If you really want to cause, ban smoking. You would have to ban smoking, and you would have to ban driving. 407-674-1025. I want to get into, we're going to sift topics here. We're going to get away from all this gun control stuff. I want to get into Donald Trump has a new tax plan. He came out this week and talked about taxing the rich. This is a Republican? 407-674-1025. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com.
You are listening to the voice of reason, the voice of truth, the voice of the millennial generation that sifts through everything in the news that is beyond reason. 407-674-1025. We have a comment. I was talking about, this is an interesting comment. I was talking about gun control, and I was putting it in perspective how many people in this country are killed from things like tobacco, car accidents, other things. Way more than people that are killed by or murdered by guns. And Dave, Orlando, you had a comment on this. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Good Friday night, you know.
Here's what's so hypocritical about the Demi-Commie Party. I call them Demi-Commie.
The Demi-Commie Party. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, think about abortions. It's okay to kill an innocent child in the womb, but and they're going to talk about gun control. It's just ridiculous, man.
That is, I can't believe I didn't think about that, Dave, because that is a great point. You want to talk about how many people are killed in this country every year because they're aborted?
Yeah.
It's way more than gun violence.
Well, it's astounding. I forget the numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know it's in the hundreds of thousands of babies aborted every year.
Yeah, wow. Dave, thank you for your call. That is a great point. They talk about, the Democrat Party wants to talk about needless deaths. Abortion is the most needless death you can have. Completely needless. Unbelievable. Okay, I want to shift gears. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to get to this today. I want to talk about taxes. Why? Because Donald Trump came out, I think yesterday, and talked about his plan for taxes. And I have some audio here. Mike. Turn on your mic.
Yes, sir.
What are you doing in there?
I'm periscoping. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Tell the audience what periscoping is.
Periscope is this new addicting app I've been on it all week. It's basically video. Yeah, it's basically video online. It live streams. People can log in and listen to what's going on. It's another social media thing.
So if they have the Periscope app, how can they reach us on the Periscope
If
app?
they have the Periscope app, they can search us through our Twitter handles. My Twitter handle is at Radio Michael7, and we need to get you set up at Michael Yaffee with the Periscope. Just so they're commenting me on it now because they can hear and comment live as you stream. And yes, I've only been addicted for a week, says this user. But basically, I'm just getting you on Periscope so you can be
I'm
live
all for
to the
that.
world.
It's just funny because, I actually, before the break, I see him doing all this stuff, talking, and I'm like, what is he doing in there?
Yeah.
And then he tells me he's Periscoping. All right.
Yeah, so audio. You want audio.
Yes,
I know. I have
thank
to
you,
work.
Mike. I got to play the Trump audio. People
Okay.
they got to hear Trump
All right,
talk
Trump
about
audio's
taxes.
coming up.
All right, so this is Trump. He was being interviewed, and he talked about his plan on taxes.
I would take carried interest out, and I would let people that are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year pay some tax, because right now they're paying very little tax, and I think it's outrageous. I want to lower taxes for the middle class. I want to lower taxes for people that are making a lot of money that need incentives. You see my statements. I mean, I do very well. I don't mind paying some tax.
So he wants to tax the rich. This is something, I'm sorry, but that's something we hear from the Democrat Party every 4 years about their plan for taxes is taxing the rich. Now, he wants to cut taxes, and he wants to cut the corporate income tax, so I give him credit for that. He wants to at least cut that, but of course, he's talking about taxing the rich again. So I just had to tell you all that. This is Donald Trump. I want to like him. I want to like him because everybody likes him, but then he says stuff like this, and it's not all bad. But then I look at other candidates, and I look at their tax plans, and specifically, and people are going to think I'm voting for this guy because I always praise him. I'm beginning more and more to like this guy. Ben Carson has his own tax plan, and Ben Carson makes a lot of sense on taxes. And Mike, I know you're busy periscoping in there, but can you play the Ben Carson audio for me?
I'm with you still. Here comes Carson.
I'm just trying to promote the periscope thing. Come on now. Play along, Mike. Yeah, this is Ben Carson's tax plan.
Of a proportional tax. That way you pay according to your ability. And I got that idea, quite frankly, from the Bible, tithing. You make $10 billion a year, you pay $1 billion. You make $10 a year, you pay $1 billion. You get the same rights. That's pretty darn fair if you ask me. Now, some people say it's not fair because, the poor people can't afford to pay that dollar. That's very condescending. I grew up very poor. I've experienced every economic level. And I can tell you that poor people have pride too. And they don't want to be just taken care of. And also, if everybody is paying, it makes it very difficult for these politicians to come along and raise taxes. It's easy to raise it on 1% or 2% or 5%. It's very difficult to raise it on 100%.
Great points. Great points. Now, real quick, we're almost out of time. Can you play Rand Paul's cut on taxes? He has another great tax plan. Better than Donald Trump's, I think. Another flat tax plan, which I like.
So we just decided to get rid of the entire tax code and start over with a 14.5% rate. This would be a 14.5% business tax and a 14.5% personal income tax, and everybody would pay it. It would be different than the current system where some corporations and some individuals file tax returns that are tens of thousands of pages long in order to avoid paying any taxes. Under our system, everybody would pay 14.5%. But the interesting thing that no one's ever tried before is we get rid of the payroll tax. So every working class American in our country will no longer pay payroll tax. It'll be part of the business tax.
I love that idea. Another flat tax idea, and he wants to get rid of the payroll tax. Now, Rand Paul's idea is cool because he's actually getting less government revenue from his tax plan, which he says will force the government to spend less, which is interesting. But I thought Ben Carson made a lot of sense, too. And he said it in a way, it's like, look, I'm not trying to punish the poor or anything. It's condescending to the poor to say that. And he's like, I got it from the Bible, and it makes sense. Everyone just pays the same rate. Everyone's in the system. And I like what he said. It's harder to raise taxes when everyone has to pay it. It makes sense. I look at those plans, and then I look at Donald Trump, and I like some of his stuff, but there are better plans out there. I'm just throwing it out there. Don't get all mad at me, everyone. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio. I thank you all for listening this week. Make sure to join me next as I produce the American Taxpayers Revolution Show. That's coming on right after this. Thank you all for listening to Beyond Reason Radio. Go to beyondreasonradio.com, and I will catch you guys next week.
I couldn't sleep, I had to listen to a conscience knowing so well that nothing comes from